not in general in favor of an urban jobs guarantee. The reason being that Manrega is in the nature of a marginal payment to tide workers over into a state of better nutrition and more food, with other basic expenditures like a place to live and so on provided, which you have only in rural areas. In urban areas, this jobs guarantee is not going to give people enough money with which to pay their rent. What it'll do is to give a job top up to people who are already resident there, let's say to the family members of those people. But unless the infrastructure is actually meaningful in urban areas, it's going to be very wasteful. No one talks about it, but a lot of Manrega expenditure also goes into largely wasteful infrastructure expenditure. But we don't look at that so much because we're looking more at the income supplement aspect of it. So it's really a workfare program. We're not interested that much in the productivity of the work. We're more interested in the welfare part of it. So I'd say that Manrega should stay rural. That's where it's really working well. And I'd say, yes, by all means, let's give it a funds boost. And that can be used to build up new agricultural marketplaces and therefore dovetail in with these farmer protests and so on. Because once the new marketplaces are built and ready and functioning, then to have non-monopolistic traders come in and buy becomes that much more possible and feasible.
So apart from what I've asked, infrastructure and some of the social security programs, what do you think should be spending priorities? I haven't specifically asked about the vaccine because it's unclear as to how much they need to spend. Obviously, that would be one priority. But what do you think are spending priorities this year?
I'm actually going to speak about the vaccines because, of course, it's a spending priority. But the question is, what should our focus be? I remember earlier I spoke about the e-way bills. Because they were an indicator that cargo movement is taking off and is really going well. What we need now is to ensure that people can also move freely, which will be enabled only if you have a very widespread vaccination program. In particular, in addition to health workers, I think there also has to be a focus on not just police, but drivers of road vehicles and rail vehicles, because that will lift some of the pressure off these people who are doing risky things when they drive across the country or they drive a train across the country. So all operators of transport vehicles of both passengers and goods, if they are vaccinated on an emergency basis, that will do a lot for the mobility that we need in order to get the economy humming again. And so that is where I would like to see the greatest, emphasis or added emphasis in the first, group of people who will be given, the free vaccine. But in terms of other things, we've talked about infrastructure, we've talked about vaccination. I think we need a big boost for nutrition expenditures, food and nutrition, especially for children of poor families. Let us recall that during this whole unfortunate COVID period, the ICDS, the Integrated Child Development Scheme, which operates all those Anganwadis where expectant and lactating mothers and infants are given food supplements, they've been closed. So that nutrition has been deprived to a very, very vulnerable segment of our population. Of course, we did have in the Garib Kalyan Yojana, we did have a huge ramp up. I was very proud of that in the PDS. But there are many poor households who don't have access to a ration card. So this denial of food to infants and expectant mothers has been devastating in terms of the potential impact it could have on the nutritional status of these families, of these children. Then remember that the midday meal scheme in schools was also not taking off. So school-going children were being denied this external nutrition flow. Once again, replaced to some extent by that household PDS entitlement, but not fully, and not as fully as the universe of children going to school because their parents may not have a ration card, especially in urban areas. So when you take all this together, the urgency of restoring food and nutrition to preschool and school children becomes paramount. When schools open, we need to focus a lot more on the food that they're going to be getting, even more than the resumption of classroom education. Particularly since from Pratham surveys, we learned that schools, teachers have been doing a lot to reach education to children in villages and so on. So it's been very heartening. But the food wasn't reaching them because the midday meal kitchens weren't functioning. So food, nutrition, especially in view of the NFHS 5 data, that stunting and wasting among children has actually worsened over the recent years. And this was in 2019-20 before COVID. So that is extremely important. Now, how can that be dovetailed in with other requirements that we have in the economy? Well, if midday meals and food in Anganwadis is sourced from local farmers and the local crops that are grown, then it's going to dovetail into enhanced farmer incomes, especially if they are thereby given this assurance that their output is going to be bought and fed straight to children. After all, historically, what did children and mothers eat? They ate locally produced foods. We didn't have a national food market. So we need to restore that link between local farm produce and feeding of children, and then we can achieve these twin objectives of getting economic growth going in the farm sector and also lowering the malnutrition among our children, which is extremely worrying. Lastly, in terms of expenditure imperatives, we need to focus on the financial sector. Particularly, I think the government should fund the setting up of a bad bank. There is a lot of research, particularly from the RBI recent working paper, which shows that it is the albatross of bad loans around the necks of these banks, which is really preventing fresh flow of credit.